Hey there. Do you remember, God, 6 months ago? Jeez, how time flies. Anyways, do you remember 6 months ago when I had a debate regarding anarchism and capitalism and private property and if anarcho capitalism is an oxymoron? And how, towards the end of that debate, we discussed a potential future debate regarding taxation and whether or not that's theft? Well, provided that I can get my dang laptop to run OBS and a YouTube stream and a call without constantly crashing, then that future debate is gonna go down. So given that, I thought I should prepare for this future debate by taking a look at...
This is a news show.
Oh, that's not it. Nope, that's not it either. Come on, where the heck did I put it? Oh, here it is.
Hey, I know you. You're that jaywalking punk anarchist.
Taking a look at how to argue and win every time, at home, at work, in court, everywhere, every day, by Gerry Spence, St. Martin's Press, 1995. Now, I'm sure you are very familiar with Gerry Spencer. In fact, you're heading to the comment section right now to tell me that I just mispronounced his name. But in case you've never heard of this guy before in your life, like me prior to writing this script, Gerry Spence was apparently a famous lawyer in the 80s and 90s. So famous, in fact, that two of the cases he'd won were made into Hollywood movies. The Silkwood versus Kara McGee trial, which was made into the 1983 movie Silkwood, starring Meryl Streep, and the Randy Weaver murder trial, which was made into the 1996 movie The Siege at Ruby Ridge, starring Randy Quaid. No relation. That's not how first names work, you know that. Anyways, Spence is a famous lawyer, I guess. Famous enough to represent clients in cases that got turned into movies, anyway. Does that mean that he has the experience and expertise to get me prepared for my upcoming debate? Well, let's let the text speak for itself. So without further ado, Part 1, Readying Ourselves to Win. Spence starts, quite predictably, with a definition of the term argument, stating, "Argument is not the process by which we seek to destroy the other. Argument is a tool with which we can achieve an end, satisfy a want, fulfill a desire. It is the incomparable art by which we connect and interact successfully with the other." Psh, yeah, right. Judging by the clips that go viral online, arguments, debates are the process by which we seek to destroy the other, and absolutely not the art by which we connect and interact successfully with the other. Yeah, sure, I'd concede that. There are plenty of Steven Crowder change my mind clips, or Ben Shapiro debates a college student half his age clips, or hell, to be fair and balanced, like a maiden on a unicycle, even some of the Sam Cedar debates are just dunk fests that do nothing to move the conversation forward in a meaningful way. But those viral clips are not the end-all be-all of argument, of debate as a concept, even in the online space. In fact, to be honest, I think the real reason folks so often avoid debates and even actively rail against them is because they fear showing up in one of those gets destroyed in debate style videos. But there are things we can do to avoid that scenario. Things we can do to ensure that the arguments we have achieve an end, satisfy a want, fulfill a desire, and connect and interact successfully with the other. And that is by overcoming the obstacles that so often lock us out of successful argumentation. Spence fittingly calls these obstacles locks. Things like not wanting to cause trouble, not wanting to take risks, not feeling adequate, not having confidence, and things like that. And throughout the book, Spence provides keys designed to unlock these barriers to effective argumentation. For example, how do you get what you want out of an argument when the lock you are facing is that your opponent is more powerful than you? Regarding my upcoming debate, for example, my opponent frequently does online debates, and so he's developed a lot of strategies and experience around debate prep and setting up a live stream and note-taking during a debate and effectively steering a conversation and keeping up with live chat and things like that. How the heck am I supposed to win against a more experienced, more powerful adversary? Well, Spence argues that in an argument, both your power and your opponent's power is your power, if wielded properly. You know, like judo, where you can use your opponent's power against them by performing throws or pins or whatever. As Spence puts it, their power is my perception of their power. Their power is my thought. The source of their power is, therefore, in my mind. For an everyday example, perhaps you wanted to ask your boss, a more powerful opponent, for a raise. You would want to use their power to your benefit, by explaining to them that they should use the power they have to give you a raise, because then you could get a car and then get to work more reliably, or you could pay off some medical debts and relieve some stress and improve your workflow, or whatever the case may be, convincing them to use their power over you for your own ends. Regarding my upcoming debate, my opponent might try and use their power, their command in the conversation, to steer the debate away from hypotheticals where their argument is weak towards ones where their argument is strong, by talking over me or misdirecting a question or gish galloping or whatever. In which case, I would need to reclaim the power in the debate by demanding they conform to expectations. Tuh, audience, can you believe this guy? What an idiot! Can you believe folks actually fall for this crap? Excuse me. I was invited onto the program with the expectation that you were going to hear out my position and respond to it. So rather than talking past me into your audience, can you just address the point that I made? Referring back to the maiden on the unicycle, my opponent in the upcoming debate does not act like this. I'm just giving a hyperbolic example. Anyways, perhaps your lock is that there are weaknesses in your argument and you fear they will be exposed and used against you. With the asking for a raise example, perhaps you call out sick a lot. You know, you're hypochondriac pilled, you're under the weather maxing, you've been quite literally going sicko mode, and you are worried that this fact will be held against you when asking for a raise. Or regarding my upcoming debate on taxation and whether or not it is theft, I'll have to wrestle with the fact that I'm not a tax expert. I don't really know the minutiae around the history of taxation or different forms of taxation that exist. Hell, I basically have to relearn how to do my own taxes every year. And I don't want that gap in my knowledge to be wielded against me. Well, the key to this lock is to be like Rabbit in 8 Mile, and spend the first half of your rap battle owning your faults and taking that ammo away from your opponent.
I know everything he's got to say against me. I am white. I am a fucking punk. I do live in a trailer with my mom.
As Spence puts it, acknowledging the truth, even the truth about our fear, perhaps especially the truth about our fear, creates credibility. For example, explaining to your boss that, yes, you have medical struggles and you openly admit that, but despite this, you should be given a raise because you have impeccable time management skills and always meet deadlines or whatever the case may be. And I have to do the same for my upcoming debate. Acknowledge that although I will still be arguing my case based off of my readings and conceptual hypotheticals, I'm not a tax expert. Admitting my shortcomings and taking that ammo away from my debate opponent and creating credibility with the audience in the process. Maybe your lock is that you're afraid to ask for what you want. You're afraid you're asking for too much, or you're afraid of rejection, and so you compensate for this fear by avoidance or being vague or indirect about what you want. Well, Spence argues that that's not the way to do things. The key to this lock is that we must directly state our goals. This avoids the uncomfortable awkwardness of our opponent unintentionally, or even intentionally, misunderstanding us. Not only this, it's actually pretty hard to look someone in the eye and deny them a reasonable request that they have plainly and politely made. Regarding a raise, don't be coy or vague and talk about how, oh, bills are really piling up these days, huh? Oh, I'm a pretty good employee, right, boss? Or whatever, just be direct and to the point. Something like, hey, excuse me, when you have some time, I'd like to get the chance to explain to you why I believe I have earned a raise. For my upcoming debate, I will have to plainly and succinctly state that taxation is not theft. Don't beat around the bush, don't be vague, just direct, concise language. But perhaps you are being plain and upfront with your goals in the argument, but the lock is on the other foot, so to speak. The lock is that your opponent is not being upfront with you. Well, to unlock this lock, we first have to understand our opponent's concealed positions by understanding what personality cluster that person likely inhabits, what prejudices they are likely to hold. Spence states, people's personalities, their likes and dislikes, their attitudes, their viewpoints, their prejudices come in clusters, as grapes come in bunches. If you examine one grape, you will know pretty much what the rest of the grapes on the cluster look like. Now, obviously, there's exceptions to this. There might be a few moldy grapes or some sour grapes that fall outside the norm of the bunch, but these are the exceptions that prove the rule. Again, going back to the talking to a boss about a raise example, various different bosses will have various personality quirks or management styles or whatever, but there are a pawful of prejudices you can expect them to have, such as wanting employees who are self-starters, who work well as a team and have good time management and things like that. And by understanding these likely prejudices, you can construct an argument that will open up your opponent to your side of the debate. But how the heck do we do that? Well, Spence provides 3 steps for dealing with an opponent's prejudices, and he uses the example of asking a lumberjack to support protecting old-growth forests to demonstrate these steps. Step 1. Openly acknowledge your opponent's prejudice. For example, that the lumberjack requires the logging industry to provide for his family, so he probably sees risking harm to the logging industry as risking harm to his family, something he'd avoid at all costs. For my upcoming debate, that might mean acknowledging the prejudice an anarcho-capitalist has against collectivist hypotheticals in favor of hyper-individualistic thinking. Step 2. Ask how your opponent intends to overcome their prejudice. Make it their responsibility. For me, this could look like making my opponent acknowledge that humans are social creatures that have always existed in groups, that when a person or family lives separate from a larger group, that's a departure from the norm. That although hyper-individualistic hypotheticals like person A does X to person B, those hypotheticals have their place, when talking about social concepts like taxation, we have to refer to hypotheticals involving group dynamics. And step 3, empower your opponent to overcome their prejudice. For example, ask the lumberjack to think much bigger than themselves. Like if they were god of the forest, tasked with protecting its development as it grew and changed over hundreds or thousands of years, what sort of decisions would they make about old-growth forests from that level of perspective? If, after these 3 steps, your opponent still rules in favor of their prejudice, such as the logger ruling against protecting old-growth forests, or the anarcho-capitalist dismissing hypotheticals that refer to groups, this choice won't seem so impartial since their prejudice was publicly acknowledged by both parties. An alternative to step 3 is to, if you can, create a win-win situation. Like, perhaps a bill could be drafted that protects old-growth forests and secures comparable jobs for lumberjacks, for example. Or for my upcoming debate, this might look like both of us acknowledging that both individualistic and group hypotheticals have relevance for understanding taxation as a concept. But okay, so we've taken a look at common locks that keep us locked out of achieving our goals through argumentation. And we have, as the title of part 1 suggests, readied ourselves to win. And now it is time to construct and deliver a winning argument. Which brings us to part 2, delivering the winning argument. Spence starts with some core questions we must answer in order to form a winning argument. These questions are, what do we want? What is the principal argument that supports us? Why should we win what we want? That is, what facts, what reason, what justice exists to support the thesis? And, at last, what is the story that best makes all the above arguments? And Spence provides the steps we must complete in order to answer those crucial questions. First, ask for what you want. We discussed this when covering part 1, but yeah, the first step in forming an argument is to be prepared to clearly and confidently ask for what you want. For my upcoming debate, what I want is to demonstrate that taxation is not theft, because humans always exist in groups. Groups have terms of service, rules for their members, and enforcing these terms of service, it isn't free. So taxation functions as membership dues for citizens of a group, and is therefore not theft. Second, research your argument. Like, just hit the books, read some articles, get some knowledge on the subject, your side, your opponent's side, all the sides, and start forming a concrete outline for your argument. For this, I'm going to look at some other debates regarding taxation as theft. There are plenty on YouTube, even one that my debate opponent previously did, so I've got to watch that one. I'm also going to search taxation on the Anarchist Library website, and maybe read The Theory of Taxation by Proudhon, and Taxation is Theft by Glitterbomb. I'm going to also search through previous video scripts and relevant texts that I've already read. For New Liberty, of course, comes to mind. And I'm going to search Google Scholar and various news websites for articles and try and get some general info on the subject. And then compile all of this info into some kind of outline. Third, select a theme that supports the argument's thesis. On this subject, Spence states, let us select a phrase, a theme, a slogan that represents the principal point of our argument. The theme can summarize a story that stands for the ultimate point we want to make. A saying, as it were, that symbolizes the heart of the issue. You know about this kind of thing from political campaigns. Build back better, make America great again, hope and change. I did not have sexual intercourse with that woman. I am not a crook, and things like that. So I'm going to have to channel my inner Frank Luntz and come up with a catchy buzz phrase that symbolizes the heart of my argument. Maybe something like, taxes are membership dues, or taxes buy membership, or maybe fees give freedom if I want to get that alliteration in there that taxation is theft has. Or does it? Is it considered alliteration if the first letter is the same, or does it have to sound the same? Like, is taxation is theft alliteration for having the same letter, but choir is killer is not? Apparently, Webster's dictionary says that alliteration means the same sound, but Oxford Dictionary says that alliteration can mean same sound or same letter. So I guess the jury's out on that one. That's a side tangent. Where the heck was I again? Oh, right. Next, humanize the argument. Meaning, don't just rely on the outline that you've made, your facts and data. Go beyond this and form an intriguing story to convey your argument. As Spence puts it, when someone abstracts his argument to me, it requires me to supply the mental images on my own. Often I do not understand the abstraction sufficiently to create a mental image. Often I do not care. Like, think about all those commercials asking for donations for this or that cause. They don't show graphs and data to convince you to donate. They spotlight an individual victim and create a compelling story around that.
Inside this precious package is the photo and personal history of an actual living, breathing, wonderful child. A child, like Alfie, who urgently needs your love.
Hi, I'm Sarah McLaughlin. Will you be an angel for a helpless animal?
For me, my goal for this step is to focus on real-world examples, particularly my friends and family members who are self-employed, and so they pay taxes in a variety of ways that don't constitute theft. Next, confess your argument's failures. Like I said in part 1, you gotta be like Rabbit in 8 Mile.
I do live in a trailer with my mom.
Or as Spence puts it, a concession coming from your mouth is not nearly as harmful as an exposure coming from your opponents. And like I said in part 1, the shortcoming I have to admit is that I'm not a tax expert. I'm not well versed in the tax code or the various ways taxes are collected. And although I might lose ground to my opponent admitting this, admitting it will take that ammo away from them and build credibility with the audience. And finally, open the other to our argument. Spence suggests that the best way to do this is to empower your opponent to reject your argument, giving them a freer opportunity to pick sides, ideally picking your side out of the two. He states, by empowering the other to reject our arguments, by acknowledging that the decision rests solely with him, we take a no-lose position, since if we do not so empower the other, he will always remain closed and protected against our arguments, and we will always lose. In my upcoming debate, this will look like asking my opponent to acknowledge that humans are social creatures and that taxation is a function of group dynamics, so understanding taxation requires hypotheticals that are social rather than individualistic. That he is free to continue to prefer individualistic framing, but that this will limit his ability to fully wrestle with the subject of taxation. Spence makes a few other smaller recommendations towards the end of this section, but I'm going to skip them. One of the ones he says is that we shouldn't use humor because that makes it seem like we don't take the subject seriously, but I disagree. How many times has some humor, some quick wit turned a debate in favor of the one cracking wise? I just don't see it his way. But okay. So we've gone through the steps of creating a winning argument. Now all we have to do is just go out and deliver it, and then win, right? Well, it probably doesn't feel that easy, and that's because it isn't. What's that old saying? Something like, public speaking is everyone's number one fear, followed closely by being burned alive? Well, don't fear, because Spence has some practices for improving your charisma, your riz, if you will, your confidence in presenting your argument. To start, he instructs us to go out into the forest and reestablish our dominance by remarking our territory, then chew up some sticks, then show those squirrels that they're a bunch of scaredy cats by chasing them up the nearest tree, then jump, this is my to-do list. How did that get in here? Okay, regarding charisma, Spence recommends that we go into the forest and sing to ourselves, starting quietly where you're comfortable and slowly getting louder and more expressive.
Fight dirty, kick below the waist,
That's how it's done to us behind closed doors each day. They use up the oil, they use up the trees. How about you, friend, and how about... Next, practice saying how you feel, loudly, and listen to yourself. And try expressing different emotions, fear, anger, joy. Become familiar with yourself and the degrees to which these emotions can be expressed. I feel slightly winded after going up these stairs. Fear. These stairs, I could have fell down the stairs and that would have been really tragic. I hate these stairs. Climbing up these stairs was bullshit. Joy. I'm happy to be outside. Basically, you don't want to be stiff or artificial in your delivery. You want to make a habit of being able to express yourself genuinely. As Spence puts it, the feelings communicated in the sounds of the words are the only truth. Next, Spence asks us to read from the phone book with emotion. Read it expressing anger and sorrow and joy and making a full palette of our emotional range available to us. Okay, this book is obviously from the 90s, because that's the last time I saw a phone book, but I can read from my pocket dictionary. It's probably going to have the same effect. Radical, adjective, 1. Basic, 2. Favoring extreme change. Noun, 1. One with radical views. 2. Chemical, group of atoms acting as one. Radicalism. The From Software final boss level of Spence's charisma training is to practice public speaking in a public space. He states, people are trained to become silent whenever they hear the tap tap tapping on the glass with a spoon. Then get up on your chair in the restaurant and begin to address the people. You may begin, ladies and gentlemen, and those that lieth in between, I am trying to get over my stage fright and at the same time learn to free up my feelings. Tell the people about the movie you saw last night and the feelings you had about it. Tell them something your child said or did and how it made you feel. Remember to soak your words with feeling as you have done so often in your secret place. Hello, attention folks. I am trying to get over my stage fright and at the same time learn to free up my feelings. And I'm going to attempt to do that by addressing you today and talk off the cuff. A show that I recently watched was the show Supercell, which I greatly enjoyed. It made me nostalgic for the show Misfits, another British delinquents having superpowers type show. I just appreciate that vibe. There's something about the concept of, the ne'er-do-wells, the underprivileged people, being able to have power over those in society that I think is a very interesting and compelling way to tell a story. It also reminds me, maybe you folks have seen that show, But I'm a Virgo, a similar kind of vibe. And I just really appreciate those stories being told. And I appreciate you listening, I appreciate you folks listening to me tell that story today. Thank you. Is that guy trying to do speeches again? Get him the hell out of here! Okay. Now that I have completed Spence's charisma training and been banned from my favorite restaurant, next, Spence argues that arguing effectively means being on the offensive. He states, when we refuse to take the initiative because we are afraid that our opponents will respond, that is, when we are afraid the opponent will engage us, we operate in a safety zone. But we can do no damage to the opponent in the safety zone. In the end, we will lose the war because we are unwilling to win. Now, this doesn't mean that we should relentlessly attack our opponent. Attacking them personally turns them into a victim and consequently makes us the villain. So, be on the offensive means attacking your opponent's arguments, not them personally. That is, unless your opponent attacks you first, in which case, if you want, you can attack them in response and it would be seen as justified retribution. Anyway, Spence concludes part 2 by reiterating the elements that make up a great argument, stating, 1. Prepare. Prepare until we have become the argument. meaning we have to be well versed in the facts, the ins and outs of the argument, all sides of it. 2. Open the other to receive your argument. This is in reference to the part about getting the other to acknowledge their biases and giving them the power to agree with you. 3. Give the argument in the form of a story, meaning don't present a boring recitation of facts, but convey your argument in an engaging story. 4. Tell the truth. Dishonesty loses credibility, and telling the truth, wins credibility. 5. Tell the other what you want, meaning be direct in your goals, what you want out of the argument. 6. Avoid sarcasm, scorn, and ridicule. Use humor cautiously. Again, I think humor's fine, but use it cautiously. Okay, fine. 7. Logic is power. Ensure that your arguments are logically sound. 8. Action and winning are brothers, meaning that winning isn't just about an effective defense, it's about attacking your opponent's position and pushing for your goals. 9. Admit at the outset the weak points in your argument. This was kind of covered in number 5, but this not only builds credibility, but it disarms your opponent. Be like Rabbit. And 10. Understand your power. Give yourself permission only to win, meaning control the direction of the debate, own the power of the argument, and empower yourself to win. And finally, part 3, arguments in love and war. This section isn't really relevant for my debate prep since it's about day-to-day arguments that a person might have, such as arguing with your partners or kids or boss or whatever, but I'm a completionist, so I will cover it briefly here. Regarding arguing with partners, Spence states, when the other responds in anger, one must terminate the argument. The argument must terminate because the other is in pain. This isn't about abusive relationships, of course, but in any relationship, there's still going to be arguments, even heated arguments. And we have to understand that anger often points to pain, and we have to know when to step away and let temperatures cool down before we address the disagreement in a more level-headed fashion. And the same goes for when we are the angry party. We have to step away and examine our anger. As Spence states, until we have examined it, you can no more deal with your undiagnosed anger than you can treat an undiagnosed disease. Regarding arguing with children, Spence argues that we must mirror the behavior that we want to see in our children, stating, if you want a child who respects, respect the child. And in this way, the winning argument will have been respect, the losing argument, manipulation. The winning argument will have been honesty, the losing argument, hypocrisy. The winning argument will have been freedom, the losing argument, control. Regarding arguing in the workplace, Spence states, if arguing is getting what you want from the other, then what do we want from the boss? I say we want but one thing from the boss, respect. If the boss respects us, he will pay us a fair wage. Now, as an anarcho-communist type pup, I of course am going to argue that a fair wage is impossible under a capitalist framework, no matter how much our boss respects us. But of course, the author only means respect and wages in regards to asking for a raise within our current economic system. And regarding arguing for a raise in our current economic system, Spence states, to argue for a raise from a corporate employer, one must always demonstrate that the higher wage will likely create more production and more profit. And he gives some examples like using the money from a raise to buy a car, making your commute quicker and more reliable, a raise to pay for further education, to be more productive, a raise to pay off medical bills and student loans, thus reducing your stress and improving your work performance, and things like that. And Spence concludes the text stating, one of the most effective means by which we share ourselves is argument. I say, therefore, one has a duty to argue. It is part of the price we pay for the space we occupy on this earth. When we witness an injustice, we have a duty to argue. When we see human beings unjustly used, disrespected, exploited, injured, we have a duty to argue. Conclusion. Well, what do you think? Do you think completing these steps laid out in the text will prepare me to win a debate on whether or not taxation is theft? Do you think these steps will help you in future debates? What are your thoughts on debates themselves, conceptually? Do you think debate is an effective way of achieving goals, or is it ineffective? Is it full of bad actors and circle jerking and duplicitous and fallacious arguments and crap like that? Is debate at best a waste of time and at worst actively harmful? Or is debate, as Spence puts it in the text, a tool with which we can achieve an end, satisfy a want, fulfill a desire, the incomparable art by which we connect and interact successfully with the other? I'm still trying to answer these questions myself, so let me know what you think. And as always, I'd like to thank my wonderful patrons. You've allowed me to support other creators I couldn't otherwise support, so I love that. You provide me with a little extra funds for books and dog toys and things like that, which is awesome. I appreciate you folks a lot. And if you like what I do here and you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/radicalreviewer. And if you're interested in radical theory or looking for a book recommendation or whatever, you can get your radical reviews here with the Radical Reviewer. Thanks for watching.
Their hypocrisy, their dishonesty, the government our enemy, the lies they think we believe, against nuclear weaponry, for peace and humanity, we fight!
Wow, baby!